I am Xavier Robert, coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiako, and today on Spotlight Africa, Ugandan president signs anti-gay bill into law. Malawi ends corruption trial against ex-president. Russia to take part in SA summit at proper level. And US and Saudi Arabia welcome extension of Sudan truce. Plus, Libyan court sentences IS members to death. The details coming up shortly. We begin today's Spotlight Africa with Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, who has assented to the controversial anti-homosexuality bill, despite condemnation of Western countries and human rights activists. The bill was first passed by MPs in March, but was returned to the Parliament for amendment. In the new law, the offense of homosexuality is now limited to gay sexual acts. People convicted under this clause face life imprisonment. The legislation also prescribes death penalty for aggravated offenses in cases of sexual abuse against a minor, a disabled person, or where a victim of abuse is infected with a lifelong illness. Members of the public will also be required to report the authorities any form of homosexual abuse against children or other vulnerable people. The law initially criminalized identifying as a sexual minority, but Museveni argued that this would have led to the arrest and prosecution of people for just their physical appearance. Meanwhile, Senegalese authorities have said that the police force has reportedly ended opposition leader Ousmane Sonko's march across the country by arresting him and forcefully returning him to Dakar. According to Interior Minister Antoine Diome, the clashes between Sonko's supporters and the police had allegedly resulted in one death, disclosing that weapons were found in the vehicle transporting him. Diome added that the opposition leader should have requested prior authorization before organizing the match. In a separate development, Malawi authorities have ended a corruption trial against former President Bakili Muluzi. Muluzi served 2 5-year terms as president between 1994 and 2004, but he was charged 5 years after he left office. According to reports, he and his former personal secretary, Linus Wieski, were charged with abuse of public funds amounting to 1.7 billion kwacha. Meanwhile, today, the Malawi High Court said it had freed Muluzi from all charges following a decision by the country's head of public prosecutions to discontinue the case. Muluzi has always protested his innocence, saying the case was political persecution by the government of his successor, Bingu Mutharika, with whom they fell out. Elsewhere, Ghana President Nana Akufo-Addo has said that the $3 billion bailout from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) will not immediately address the country's economic challenges. In a televised address to the nation, the Ghanaian president said that the IMF bailout would restore confidence and put the country's economy back on a sound footing. He acknowledged that seeking help from the IMF was a painful but necessary decision to help the economy recover from the impact of the global pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Akufo-Addo added that to cushion the situation, his administration will clamp down on tax evaders and review existing tax laws. Still in Ghana, where Judicial Workers Association has called off the indefinite nationwide strike after meeting government officials on Monday. The Judicial Service Staff Association of Ghana, JUSAG, says the strike is on hold for 2 weeks to allow for engagement and fast-tracking approval of their salary increase demands. It would be recalled that court activities in Ghana came to a halt following the strike action last week, Thursday. Meanwhile, all judicial service staff were directed not to report to work until President Nana Akufo-Addo approves their demand for new salaries and payment of arrears since January. Ghana's government faces a tough choice as demands for salary increase goes against the International Monetary Fund bailout condition for authorities to reduce spending. Meanwhile, the Ghana National Association of Authors and Publishers has apologized over a contentious history textbook for schools, which attempted to explain activities of Christian missionaries in the country. The book, titled History of Ghana for Basic Schools Learners Book 4, states that the existence of religion, particularly Christianity, was the cause of doctrinal conflicts and increased poverty in Ghana. Parents and other stakeholders condemned the content of the book, saying it allegedly denigrated Christianity. Meanwhile, the country's Deputy Education Minister, Ntim Fordjour, described the book as obnoxious, saying its content was appalling and misconceived. The National Council for Curriculum and Assessment, NACA, has since demanded the immediate recall of the book from the market. Authors and publishers on Monday apologized for the error and said they would set up a committee to access all other books in schools published by its members. In a separate development, one person has died while 50 Ghana's Black Volta River in the Savannah region. According to authorities, the boat capsized while transporting passengers from Dokochina to Pandai in the Borno East region. The Border District Director of the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, Kipo Sulemana, said that the boat, which was overloaded with passengers and goods, hit a tree stump in the river and capsized. Away from that, drone strikes in Libya have killed at least 2 people and wounded several others, including the nephew of a Libyan member of parliament. The strikes, which hit parts of Almaya port in the northwest, followed others. Meanwhile, politicians in the country's eastern-based parliament have accused the Tripoli-based National Unity Government (GNU) of targeting the home of the local MP, Ali Boujriba. The GNU has denied this, saying the drones were aimed at drug smugglers and people traffickers operating at Almaya port. Libya has been plagued by more than a decade of violence ever since the NATO-backed toppling of former President Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. In the meantime, a Libyan court is reported to have issued death sentences to 35 people accused of being members of the militant Islamic State (IS) group. According to reports, a further 23 were jailed at the hearing in Misrata. 5 people were acquitted. The defendants, all held since December 2016, are the first group of more than 300 alleged jihadists due to be tried and sentenced. The case comes 6 years after more than 700 pro-Tripoli government fighters were killed in a battle to retake the Libyan city of Sirte from jihadists. Now, authors apologize for Ghana book denigrating Christianity. So stay tuned for details of this and more right after the break. Many thanks for staying tuned. Moving on now to Kenya, where Russian Foreign Affairs Minister Sergei Lavrov has arrived in Kenya on an unannounced trip. Moscow's Ministry of Foreign Affairs made the announcement of Lavrov's arrival in Nairobi via a tweet without giving further details on the visit, saying it will be a fruitful week for Russia-Kenya bilateral relations. Lavrov's visit comes days after Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba made an African tour last week. In the meantime, questioned on whether Russian leader Vladimir Putin will attend the BRICS summit in South Africa in August, the Kremlin spokesman has said Russia will take part at the proper level. The Russian president was invited to the gathering earlier this year, but a warrant subsequently issued by the International Criminal Court (ICC) means South Africa would be expected to arrest him if he attends. The BRICS alliance represents some of the world's leading emerging economies, including Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa. Meanwhile, South Africa has granted diplomatic immunity to officials attending the summit, but the Foreign Affairs spokesman added that such immunities were standard for international gatherings and did not override warrants issued by international tribunals. In a separate development, the South African authorities are investigating an incident in which newborn babies were placed in cardboard boxes instead of incubators or cribs in Northwest Province. Reports say the incident in Mahikang Provincial Hospital's neonatal section came to light after a Facebook post showed babies wrapped in purple hospital blankets with nasogastric tubes and placed in brown boxes. Meanwhile, Northwest Health Chief Madoda Sambatha said they were investigating the matter to establish how long the babies had stayed in the boxes. Sambatha apologized and called for calm while the matter is being investigated. Away from that, 3 Tunisians have been reportedly arrested on suspicion of starving a sub-Saharan migrant to death. The victim, a man from Benin, died after he and 18 other migrants were attacked at a house in Tunisia's second city, Sfax. 5 others were injured. The country has seen a big rise in racially motivated assaults on sub-Saharan migrants since an incendiary speech in February by President Kais Saied. He blamed them for a wave of violence and crime. Reports say Tunisia has now overtaken Libya as the major. In another development, the leader of Ethiopia's former rebel group, Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF), Debretsion Gebremichael, has called for the holding of elections immediately in Tigray. He said the interim administration can only govern for between 6 months and a year, in line with the Pretoria Peace Agreement. He stressed that the people of Tigray have to be led by leaders of their own choice. Away from that, the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor has called for a new way to tackle war crimes in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Karim Khan, who is on a fact-finding mission in DR Congo, said on Monday that there was a need for a stronger partnership among the people, local authorities, civil society, and global players to show a common will to put an end to crimes. He said there had been cases and convictions, but that there is a truth staring at their face. On the developments from Sudan, the United States and Saudi Arabia have welcomed the extension of a ceasefire deal between Sudan's warring military factions and another 5 days. Washington and Riyadh announced the latest deal, as well as brokering the previous week-long truce. In a joint statement, they acknowledged that the ceasefire had not been fully observed, but said it had allowed the delivery of aid to 2 million people in Sudan. The UN World Food Programme said the relative lull in fighting had allowed it to send supplies to residents trapped in the capital, Khartoum, for the first time since fighting erupted 6 weeks ago. Meanwhile, the Sudanese army and its rivals from the Rapid Support Forces (RSF) have accused each other of repeated violations, particularly in the Darfur region. And lastly, on Spotlight Africa today, Kenyan-born Bernice Kariuki has resigned as Arsenal's private chef after 2 years at the English Premier League club. She announced her departure as Arsenal recorded a thumping victory against Wolverhampton Wanderers on Sunday, winning 5-0 to end the season in second place. Kariuki was picked by the club in 2021 and became involved in the preparation of meals for the first-team players at the London Colney training ground. According to reports, she managed the daily well-being and nutrition of the team before and after matches, as well as menus for the traveling team. Before joining Arsenal, Kariuki worked at several high-end hotels in London. She did not reveal her next move, but thanked Kenyans for their support over the years. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. You've been watching Spotlight Africa. My name is Xavier Robert. Thanks for watching. Do enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye for now.